Hi there, everyone. How you doing? Jeff C. here. It is Wednesday, November the 12th, and of course that means we'll do it live tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on Red Pill Revolution, so please don't miss it, where we will be talking about all the stuff that's going on in the world, including the G20 summit coming up in Brisbane this week, and of course all the false flags that have been going on. The color red, the programming, of course, has been huge. It's really been the color of the country of Canada for the last few weeks, starting off with the two false flags that they carried out. One here in Quebec, and then, of course, the big show there in Ottawa. And Ottawa became drenched in red. Everywhere was red. Of course, the poppies are the powerful symbol that they're using. Red, red is such a powerful sort of trigger color. Represents so many different things like, anger, death, love, all kinds of different things. Of course, blood, the heart, right? There's just so much power in the color of red, and they really like to use it a lot. That's the reason why fire trucks are painted red, for instance, right? I mean, it's such a powerful trigger color, and they love to use it in their programming. And you're going to see something here that's quite astonishing here, off of the National here, of course. This is the Tower of London, right? And they have surrounded the entire Tower of London. They drained the moat, and they replaced it with thousands, tens of thousands, maybe 880,000 poppies. 880,000 poppies. Fake poppies. And wouldn't you know it, all the people that planted the fake poppies were dressed in red, and, all the royalty showed up. So let's take a look at this. It's quite astonishing.
For nearly 2 centuries, the moat around the Tower of London ran dry. But as you saw earlier in the program, it's now been flooded with a sea of poppies. It's a detailed and amazing tribute to the British soldiers who perished in the First World War. All 888,246 of them. Here again is the CBC's Nala Ayed.
It takes an army to reassemble history, to plant new life.
It takes an army to reassemble history. It takes an army to reassemble it. I guess you can reassemble it and make it whatever you want. Reassemble it, reconstruct it. I mean, it is always the victors that write the history anyway. So all our history books are written by the satanic elite that run this planet. Of course, they are headquartered in places like the Tower of London. And wouldn't you know it, they've got the sheeple out, all dressed in red, planting hundreds of thousands of these fake poppies, which is supposed to be a tribute to all the soldiers that died in the First World War. Now, that's over 100 years ago. Is there anybody that is left from the First World War? I don't think there's a damn soul left on the planet that served in the First World War. So who are we planting these things for? Well, we're planting them for the sheeple, of course, because we need to program them that our heroes are the military, and that they gave the ultimate blood sacrifice to the royal, which is their lives.
To a grave past. Quietly, proudly, they work to pay tribute, one precious poppy at a time. And a field of remembrance slowly takes shape.
It's really weird, too, when you think about it. It also has that kind of maple leaf look to it, but the fact that they have to plant fake poppies, right? Instead of planting, say, real poppies. Maybe real poppies wouldn't grow in this climate in England. I really don't know. But, of course, I've gone into the whole poppy symbolism, all the different meanings of the poppy. Poppies, of course, meaning death and sleep, right? Sleep, as shown in movies like the MK Ultra Monarch programming masterpiece called The Wizard of Oz. Poppies! Yes, poppies will put them to sleep. So the irony here, of course, being that these are fake poppies. So fake poppies to commemorate the services, the deaths of real soldiers?
I think it's important to remember, I think, we're 2 generations or 3 generations further on, but I just think that, it's quite fresh in many ways.
It's quite fresh. It's quite fresh. Most people can't even remember last week, let alone last year. And yet we're supposed to be thinking that World War I is quite fresh. Well, that's what they want. They want to program you with these wars forever. I mean, until there's World War III, of course. And then you'll be programmed with that one if you happen to survive it. And the soldiers will all be heroes. And, the bad guys will be the losers. That's how it works, folks.
So a century after the start of a war that decimated a generation, its enduring emblem, flourishing in the heart of London, can still inspire shivers.
Blood swept lands and seas of red, where angels fear to tread. It's a line written by a soldier back then.
You gotta love it. Line written by a soldier back then. Yeah, like fucking right. I mean, seriously, give me a fucking break. It was written by some poet, right, who worked for the royals or whatever. You notice how the poppies climb up into the Tower of London? This is how they mind control people, right? The red scarf, the poppy, of course, the fake poppies, the sea of fake poppies to support their wars.
Inspired this work of art now. And what a fitting home for such powerful imagery. 100 years ago, this was the busy training ground for thousands of young military recruits going off to war. Many of them never came back.
Recruits flocked to that moat to swear an oath to the crown and set off to war. So many just barely men, up to 250,000 under 18. Among them were also many Canadians, like the Ludbrook brothers, Ellis and Frederick, who died a handful of years apart.
A handful of years apart. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Why can't you just say 3 years apart or 4 years? A handful. I don't know how much you can fit in a handful. How many years can you fit in a handful? Anyways, it's just so ridiculous. Yes, I've lost lots of family in World War I and World War II going way back, so I'm not shitting on the people that have given their lives in order to support the Bankster Wars. But really, World War I is really interesting to study, because it was a war of the aristocrats. I mean, they were the ones that carried the whole thing out and convinced all the people, because in Europe it had been 100 years pretty much since there had been some major war, right? So everybody couldn't wait. They had these ideas of romanticism, right? About war and how wonderful war was and how you became a real man. And people, when the war was announced in places like London and in Paris, people were out in the streets celebrating and singing, right? Because they were led to believe that war was a glorious thing, and kind of like the Klingons, right? So they programmed people back then just as they program them now, and this thing was one of the worst wars ever. I mean, it was so awful. That's where all the chemical warfare started. Tanks, things like that, first made their appearances in World War I. It was one of the goriest, bloodiest conflicts. It was one of those conflicts that raged on for years. You had 4 years where, the lines, the battle lines, right, between the Allied forces and the German forces would move back and forth maybe 100 feet. I mean, they just slaughter each other. It was absolutely horrible. All right, and we're supposed to believe that these people went off to fight these wars for our freedom. It couldn't be further from the truth, folks. It could not be further from the truth. In fact, I recommend anyone who's listening to go watch the film called Grande Illusion, which is a classic World War I film, and it really rips the whole veneer of this heroism of soldiers and all that. These people had no choice whatsoever, and this war was completely orchestrated by the banksters, and they profited obscenely from it and bankrupt their countries at the same time.
Sergeant E.E. Ludbrook, Canadian.
Their names read one night into the installation.
Right, and the Masonic gear and everything, right, and the bugle horn. It's so sick, these people.
Honor roll. Dark times, briefly remembered.
Briefly remember.
Since July, thousands have volunteered again to raise poppies in the drained moat at the Tower of London in time for Remembrance Day. Among them is Will Buchan and his mother. His great uncle, only 19, was one of the soldiers killed in the war. Four generations back.
4 generations
Take
back.
a moment and step back and think about it and look at the sea of poppies. I mean, it's been a symbol.
Yeah, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of how the aristocracy of Europe bled the common people in order to profit obscenely. I mean, it's so disgusting. Why don't we really tell how the story happened? Not about saving your freedom, not about fighting those nasty Germans. And by the way, the Versailles Treaty there, which was the punishment that the Allied forces inflicted upon Germany, was so brutal that it sent Germany into the worst economic depression in the history of the planet, which really set the stakes for World War II. All right, so I mean, there's nothing to glamorize about these wars. These wars were awful and completely 100% avoidable. And they're programming you for future wars. They're programming you once again that soldiers are heroes and they gave their lives for freedom. They gave their lives for psychopaths who didn't give a flying fuck about them.
For years, ever since the war, of all these fallen soldiers, and it's very poignant.
The handmade ceramic poppies are based on the Canadian version, the ones Colonel John McCrae made famous in that equally famous poem. Each represents a life lost. The outpouring of interest has only grown as the poppies...
There's deep symbolism in that, of course, too, that the blood coming out from the Tower of London and spilling onto the fields, because it was these people up in these towers that created these wars. So they literally created this sea of red.
Multiplied. Live art attracting crowds and royalty.
Royalty. Scumbag lizards. She's wearing the green, of course. Go figure, guys. I mean, go figure. And here's a real reptilian here. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is so... Oh.
Many others signed up to buy one.
Yeah, there she goes. She's got the blue.
Supporting
all the medals, right?
Soldiers and vets. For the volunteers, the undertaking is a show of gratitude.
It's important to try and remember what they gave up their lives, the ultimate sacrifice, and it's very poignant to be part of that commemoration today.
Unbelievable.
888,246 poppies. A life and a story behind every one.
So there you go, Casey. Enter the Stars 88 once again, right? That's deeply symbolic. That's deeply Illuminati, Masonic, the whole works. And I'm hoping that Police State Radio takes a look at this, because I'm sure he'll do a better job than me breaking down all the symbolism that they're doing here. It really is quite revolting how they're able to spin these things and program future generations. Future generations will look at these things and the Hollywood type films that come out that glamorize, of course, the West, that we were heroes and all that. It's unbelievable. And soldiers are heroes. Everybody, if you haven't seen the film Flags of Our Fathers with Clint Eastwood, that's an excellent film about the folly of soldiers being heroes. I highly recommend that. Of course, it's part of two parts. The first one, Letters from Iwo Jima, is the Japanese side of the same battle. All right, so I think it was the Guadalcanal. Those are really good films. I mean, The Grande Illusion really is an excellent film that shows you a lot of what the First World War was about. And there is a huge Grande Illusion that exists out there to this day, because the elites, especially the royals and their PR, arm is so massive and powerful and has such deep pockets that they can really mind control people in Great Britain for so long. And it's time people break free from this mind control. We have to remember what they have done to our ancestors, but we cannot have these false sort of notions that these people actually fought for freedom. They were innocent victims that were lambs led to the slaughter. And that's the harsh reality of it that the British royals want to cover up. So please, thank you for listening. Tune into the show tonight at 9 p.m. on Red Pill Revolution. I wish you all the best.